Let me remind you that we work in a new partnership with Symbolism. So it's June 8, Ukraine Media Center starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Shiprenko, and let me remind you, we work in a new partnership with Suspilne in a wonderful space called Urban 500. And now we'll be talking about the presentation of the trailer for the movie called People of Steel and pre-premiere screening results for European diplomats. So let me introduce our speakers. It's Serhii Fomenko, musician, director, frontman of band Petro, Yevgenia Sernelnikova, Association of Azovstal Fabulous, Andrii Rizol, the head of the association, See Ukrainian, Petro Yatsenko, representative of the coordination headquarters for the treatment, and about to join us will be Alexander Pokholuk, the head of MHPT Community Charter Foundation. So, Mr. Serhii, please tell us how unique is this movie that we will be discussing and what is the goal it pursues. Good afternoon, everybody. So, it's a film that tells, obviously, about the events that were unfolding in Mariupol based on the evidences of those who were there. The evidences of the fighters and paramedics of Mariupol garrison is the story of a fight and work of the Association of the Families of Azovstal Defenders, fight for their freedom, and it all falls into the context of Russian-Ukrainian war. So people of steel are definitely the people who were defending Mariupol, but for me they are the essence of, a collective image of Ukrainians, because we keep track of the events that were unfolding since this morning. And just recently, an hour ago, the Russians inflicted another strike on a central children's hospital. The same story happened in Mariupol when they inflicted strike on a maternity hospital. So you see, the story is real up to date, and we would like to make sure that the most people, specifically those from abroad, those who watch the events in Ukraine like news, so to make sure that they understand that those are not just news, that the war is going on. And in fact, more than 900 representatives of Azov Brigade are still held in captivity. We would like to focus on the fact that they are still being held in captivity, and there are even more people than that being held captive. The story still goes on. They are all our people. The film is real dramatic, but it's focusing on the situation to demonstrate it from their perspective. Well, unfortunately, we don't have an opportunity to watch the full film, but I would like to ask our technical team to put the trailer on the screen.
У нас нема звуку.
Ще раз спочатку давайте.
Serhii Fomenko. Before 2022, very few people would have known about Azovstal or even located Mariupol on the map of Ukraine. Since then, Azovstal and Mariupol have become a symbol of steel resistance of Ukrainian people, and also a witness to the tragedy of the civilized world, revealing the barbaric treatment of the civilian population. Today, thousands of prisoners of war and civilians are held captive in Russia, facing severe torture, hunger, and psychological abuse. This documentary serves as a lasting tribute to the defenders of Mariupol, but it is also a constant call to keep everyone's effort mobilized so that each and every person in captivity can come back home. On my part, I convey to you the still support of the Assembly on this matter. Slava Ukraini.
This war began in 2014 after the victory of Ukrainians in the Revolution of Dignity. After the annexation of Crimea and occupation of parts of the Luhansk and Donetsk region, Russia started long and brutal war against a sovereign state. Having failed in a hybrid war, which Russian propaganda called a civil conflict for 8 years, in February 2022, Putin made an announcement about the beginning of special operation on denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. Large-scale missile attacks by the Russian Federation on the targets of civilian infrastructure, airborne landings, infantry, artillery and tanks, sabotage groups, the attack on the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, but also Irpin, Bucha, Kherson, Kharkiv, Mariupol, Chernihiv, and others caused great human casualties. Mariupol, an industrial strategic port city in the southeast of Ukraine, became one of the most affected. The bloodiest and most brutal battles of the Russo-Ukrainian War took place in the city and its surrounding areas.
My name is Prokopenko. I'm a commander of the Azov regiment.
The Mariupol garrison, which consisted of the special unit of Azov, the soldiers of the National Guard of Ukraine, Marine brigades, ward guards, police officers, volunteers from a territorial defense and paramedics.
Нелюдські подвиги, вони стали просто буденністю. Я дуже багато бачив операцій, які планувалися як самовбивчі, з чітким розумінням того, що це неможливо виконати. Але люди йшли і виконували цю задачу.
Коли Маріуполь вже потрапляв в оточення, Денис проводив евакуацію як з Маріуполя, так і вже надалі з Азовсталі цивільних.
Кількість цивільних людей, які загинули в Маріуполі від дій росіян, вона колосальна. Реалістично можна говорити про те, що кількість загиблих людей в Маріуполі може сягати до 100 тисяч чоловік.
В Маріуполь я потрапила 24 лютого, і по 17 травня я знаходилась на Азовсталі. Прилетіла бомба та не розірвалася. 5 чоловік повторно поранило, деякого привалило, почали їх розкопувати. Достали, але я знаю, що одного не достали.
Я розумію, це боляче слухати, бо серед поранених і загиблих, можливо, є ваші рідні і близькі. Але слухайте, бо ви маєте розуміти ситуацію і діяти. Нагадувати про Маріуполь, кричати про нього, бо ми не хочемо бути героями і мучениками посмертно.
Слава Україні! 86 днів оборони Маріуполя. Вище військове керівництво дало наказ про збереження життя та здоров'я військовослужбовців гарнізону та припинення оборони міста.
Я був поранений на бараці на промці, коли відбувся теракт. У мене осколкові лівої кісті руки, обличчя, правого коліна і контузія.
Те, що відбувається з людьми, які втрачають зв'язок зі своїми рідними, хто на фронті, це коло пекла.
Більше 700 наших людей в полоні. Наша боротьба не закінчиться, поки ці люди не будуть повернуті додому. І це неважливо, будуть тривати бойові дії в Україні чи ні. Чи будуть вони тривати не в Україні.
Ми, як щит для Європи, для цього світу, наші хлопці надзвичайні воїни, і потрібно прикласти максимум зусиль, щоб їх дістати з полону і захистити нашу країну. Тому я хочу, щоб світ почув і допоміг нам на шляху нашої боротьби за свободу і за незалежність.
The war for Ukrainian independence continues. It is not a battle between just Ukraine and Russia. It is a battle between a free, democratic world and the world of dictators and dictatorships. On the front line of this war are people of steel.
Україна продовжує.
Well, Ukraine continues using all the methods to communicate the truth about the crimes committed by Russian Federation. Here we use diplomacy and cultural methods, and it's one of the examples of such methods. And I know that was a premiere demonstration in front of the diplomats. So, Mr. Serhii, tell us, how was this demonstration. What was the reaction of the international community? Well, the demonstration was organized with the Association of the Cities of France and Ukraine in Strasbourg, with the support of Support Action Ukraine and Permanent Representative Office of Ukraine in EU and Culture versus War, and also projects Eyewitness, supported by MHP Hromady. And we wanted to show to the European diplomats what's going on. There were representatives of about 46 countries there, and there were meetings held with President of Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, Theodoros Chrysopoulos, as well as with Mr. Krivas, the Minister of the Cabinet of Ministers of the Council of Europe, during which we've discussed the problems of our prisoners of war that was supported by the evidences of the witnesses, basically the representatives of Azov, the paramedics who were set free from captivity in autumn 2022, and they were providing evidence about tortures, the conditions of captivity, and other parts of their terrifying experience in the prisons of Russia. I think Mr. Petro may give us more color on that part of the story. So, Mr. Petro, can you tell us how did the coordination headquarters support the production of this film, and how do we communicate this problem, including using this film, that we need to bring our people back from captivity? Thank you very much. For us as a coordination headquarters, it's very important to make sure that the topic of the prisoners of war, as well as our civilians who were illegally held captive, that it continues being present on the international platforms. This is why we support projects like this, and it's important for us that the European diplomats and other decision makers who can influence the aggressor country in one way or another, we will be talking about this more, so to make sure that they remain in the context of what's going on, and high quality art products just like this film. I've seen it completely, and it's really impressive. You know, it doesn't leave you indifferent. That's a good director's work. A handful of important evidence is provided by the witnesses. So again, it's a high-quality product that properly represents what happened during that historic event. The defense of Mariupol, our heroic efforts, and our individual heroism, specifically those that inherent in the defenders of Mariupol, those who were standing to defend the city, who got together to organize the defense. That's a real deed, and the things like that really influence the Europeans, and we call the Europe to increase their both diplomatic and economic pressure over the aggressor state. And an important message that we try to communicate in all of the possible platforms is that Russia has to stop torturing and humiliating all of our people who temporarily stay in captivity. We remember about every single one of them. We work incessantly on making sure that our civilians, our heroes, are either exchanged or brought back home to Ukraine. Coordination headquarters continues this work 24/7. All of the branches of the security and defense forces involved in the activities of the coordination headquarters, we all keep working to make sure that the exchanges become bigger, that we are able to bring more and more people back from captivity, just like we brought back 10 civilians within a 53rd exchange. As of today, we were able to bring 3,310 people from captivity from Russian Federation. It seems like a big number, but in fact, the number of our people kept in captivity is way bigger, and we need to first preserve their health, their life, and demonstrations like this, such honest and talented media products like this film that was made by famous musician Serhii Fomenko, is a real necessary thing. You know, it leaves an impression in your heart, in your soul, and it's complete truth. There are no innuendos or manipulations in that film. It's a thing that is about to help us to influence and to bring back eventually our people, the defenders of Mariupol, the defenders of Azovstal, bring them back to Ukraine. So again, this demonstration is incredibly important. This cultural event is really significant, and us as coordination headquarters, we are ready to support things like that. We are ready to work on having Russia admit the representatives of International Committee of Red Cross to all the places of captivity of our civilians and prisoners of war, and monitoring like this would allow improving the conditions they stay in all the way up until the exchange. So our task is to preserve their life and health. Thank you very much. You've mentioned that the significant number of Azovstal defenders have already come back home, and still a significant number of them is staying over there. So I would like to ask Ms. Evgenia, how significant is this product for reestablishing of justice for the defenders of Azovstal defenders? Well, good afternoon. I'm a sister of a prisoner of war of Azov Brigade, and I'm a representative of the civil organization Families of Azovstal Defenders. Just for the context, our family didn't have any news about my brother. That's the same situation for the majority of the families. We don't get any information from Russians. And as Petro mentioned, one of our goals is to bring the attention of the European community, representatives of other countries, so they could support us in communication, support us in a pressure on International Committee of Red Cross and the United Nations, whom we still rely upon because they are vested such authorities. But you know, for us as Ukrainians, we live in a bubble, and for us, it's a reminder. I mean, such a movie. But for the majority of the foreigners, you know, that's a news. That's a revelation. We know Russia spends a lot of money on propaganda. You know, they tell all of the world that they've come to Ukraine to take over the nation as the neo-Nazis. So all of the products that Russia manufactures, you know, I mean, we're saying that we're waiting for some information from the Russians, I mean, or the international community about the losses in Mariupol, but at the same time, Russia starts printing the new books. They start rewriting the story and adding more propaganda about their reconstruction of Mariupol already. So we have to come up with products like this, the films, because Russia invests a lot of money in their propaganda, in the news, in new books, in new films, in children's games, tabletop games. So in this context, products like this film, they have to exist. We have to have our voice in music, in films, in books. So again, it's a positive influence to explain the situation in this market. I mean, to explain the situation with this fight, but we need to move it like this, and 200,000 more to become at least even with Russia in terms of volume of manufacturers. So, Mr. Serhii, can you please tell us what were the difficulties that you were facing as you were making this movie? Well, this is what I wanted to mention. Obviously, I started tracking the events in Mariupol as I was a part of territorial defense forces back here in Kiev, and it was obvious for me that Kiev, Mariupol, and probably Kharkiv axis, that they were two important poles where the fight has started. I mean, as the newest part of this war. I was keeping track of it all the time, and in the middle of the summer of 22, I got a realization that this story should be made as a movie. We all know the news. The news keeps changing. There's a lot of horrible news, and this story is the story of a real deed of Mariupol defenders and the tribulations they're going through now, specifically the people who are held in captivity, because we know there are people who were convicted there in Russia, convicted to long jail sentences, and we have to keep this topic in focus too. So the movie was being born for a long time. It was difficult psychologically. For me, it was important to avoid fantasies, manipulations, to have only concentrated facts and truth there. But I had to do it with understanding of that important deed. The work was really long, and I appreciate the input of all of the partners, the charity foundations, MHP Gромady, Razov, Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, Metinvest, and civil organization Heart of Azovstal. They got involved in this project, along with Association Watch Ukrainian, Andrii Rizol, and Culture versus War project, because our weapon, culture is yet another weapon, probably even more powerful, because the wars, they start in the heads and in the hearts. But still, this film, it has a mission. Its mission is to have all those people who stay in captivity set free, so they don't stay in information shadow, so to say, because of the time or other things. So I was trying to make a film that would be a quality film, so that people watching it would continue thinking about what's going on to the people who were defending Mariupol. So that was our task. So for what I understand, the Association Watch Ukrainian could not help it but supporting the film. So Mr. Andrii, what is the place of this film among other war movies, and what is its meaning for Ukrainian audience and foreign audience? Well, we were supporting this idea from the very, very beginning as it just emerged. So talking about me personally, I'm a co-producer of this movie, but I wanted to expand a little bit, well, just in brief, but still I'll expand the helicopter vision of this issue. In this particular case, there is a number of the examples of interaction. For example, our association, since the beginning of the big war, we organized about 220 events in 38 countries and 80 plus cities. So we're building the infrastructure of influence. And now this infrastructure is being used to popularize the people of steel. So in this infrastructure, we've established significant cooperation between the state actors, responsible businesses, the military, the artists. So, it's kind of a horizontal organization that is aimed at increasing this influence. And what I have to add, there is zero government investment in this project. And yet another thing is that after we've established those events, we know that the documentaries are the most powerful tool to establish loyalty, to communicate the truth, and to establish the bridges of communication with those people who influence the decision being taken in favor of Ukraine. There is no more efficient tool. Again, that's a focused product, so every task is supposed to be supported with its instruments. Is the best instrument to set the Ukrainian prisoners of war free, is the best instrument to influence the decision makers in key European or international platforms, United Nations, NATO, European Union, European Parliament. It's not a mass market. It's a real focused tool to communicate the truth on a very sensitive and painful topic. Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. The charity foundation MHP Hromady decided to support this product. Why? What is the value of that movie for your organization? Thank you for your question. We had a long story of cooperation with Mr. Andrii. We worked together in support of cultural products for a number of years. As Ms. Evgeny has mentioned, culture is what makes us different. It's what makes us Ukrainians. And when a question has arisen about the support of this film, we've got involved on the stage of post-production. You know, there are some topics that we don't discuss. We postpone them, but we realized that we have to start saying about the problem covered by this film right now, because I clearly understand what people feel, because my good friend, he was missing in action, and then he was found in online chats. And you know, I apologize for saying this, but sometimes when you hear the evidences from the people coming back from captivity, you don't know what's worth: to end up prisoner of war or to be killed in action. So again, there are some topics that we postpone, but there are topics that we have to discuss, not only talk about, but yell, cry about, scream about, because a lot of our defenders, you know, they go through the experiences that you would never wish to anybody. Well, Mr. Serhii, European diplomats have seen this film already. What are your further plans? Where do you want to demonstrate it? And how can Ukrainians see it? Well, basically, this special demonstration in Strasbourg, it was a model to see how it would work. And what I've seen the effect way more intense and powerful than I expected, because people were sitting, you know, they were representatives of the European Union countries, European Union member states, and we had a long discussion of the film. And during the discussion, there was a address of Alla Berezhnitska and Maxim Berezhnitsky, who were telling about the details of their captivity in torture chambers of Russian Federation. And then, based on all those stories, we have a plan to scale it up, at least the platforms where the film will be demonstrated during the premiere demonstrations in European Union, in United States, United Kingdom. And thanks to the fact that we have a lot of partners who supported our project, which I again appreciate a lot, because it's our joint task, our joint mission to to ensure the better coverage of this story. We have a plan to demonstrate it in Berlin, in Brussels, in European Parliament, in Berlin, in Bundestag. We plan to demonstrate it in The Hague, in the International Court. We have a plan to demonstrate it in U.S. Congress, in the United Nations, in Great Britain. And now we're just, you know, trying to digest all that information, I mean, the way it happened. And I hope that we will be able to get better coverage of this story, to make sure that the focus of attention to this important topic, you know, people staying in hell, in captivity, they don't know about what's going on here in Ukraine. They are being tortured every day, physically and psychologically. We always see the Ukrainian prisoners of war being set free from Russian prisoners, you know, it's similar to the way the people were looking in concentration camps of Nazi Germany. I mean, after every demonstration, we emphasize that now Ukraine is the fortress of free Europe. We are the outpost of, we stand having our face turned to a horrible enemy, and we hold this enemy back from destroying Europe. It's Ukraine who does it, the people of steel who does it, who do it, specifically Azov. And, taking all that pressure that the Ukrainian military does, you have to be real strong, just like the Ukrainian military, Ukrainian society. So it's only the beginning, and I want to emphasize it again. I want to thank the Association of the Cities Français Ukraine, the South Association, the Permanent Representative Office of Ukraine in the Council of Europe, the Association Watch Ukrainian, the Charity Foundation, MHP Gramadi, Gusser. And first of all, I would like to thank the Ukrainian defenders and their families for your spirit, for your strong spirit. And to finalize it, I would like to ask Evgenia, maybe there is some information that you would like to communicate about the numbers of people. Well, look, the total number of the military who were walking out of Azovstal in May 2022 is more than 2,500. Now, after 2.5 years, the total number of those still staying in captivity is more than 1,500, including 900 servicemen of Azov. Why it was previously 700 and now it's 900? Well, because now it has grown into a brigade from a regiment. It's when the National Guard and Azov got united. We know about the conviction of the prisoners of war, which is a violation of Geneva Convention. And when Russia has those trials, they don't call you telling like, okay, there's a trial going on. We can only talk about the facts that the families can see in those horrible Russian publics. And we know about more than 100 servicemen of Azov dead. We know about the most cruel crime against the servicemen held prisoners of war in Olenivka. About 53 Azov servicemen were executed this year on the night of 28 and 29 July. It will be the commemoration day, the second year. And now the UN investigation of this incident was over, and it's up to us to continue pressing and to reach that moment where it's not only popping up in the news, but our task is justice for the families of those who died in the terrible barrack number 200 in Olenivka detention site. And we want to bring all of our prisoners of war back home. We know Russia does not only adhere to Geneva Conventions, but to just human standards. We know that this topic is being described. Everybody can take a look at the pictures and to see the way our defenders are looking. Unfortunately, there are identified facts of death. I mean, people being tortured to death while being held in captivity. People are bearing no arms. They are just being killed in captivity. And again, I was visiting Dachau. I was seeing those concentration camps, and It was something looking like prehistoric, not something between which there is a 100 years distance. But you know, in Russia, we have to keep talking about this. It's a systemic policy, the policy of tortures, that inhumane attitude. This is something that exists in their Russian prisons. And if they treat their prisoners like this, we can only imagine what they do to Ukrainians in view of this hatred of theirs towards us. So what we have to do is to seek liberation of all of our prisoners of war being still held in captivity. Thank you, Miss Yevgenia. Hopefully this film will become a lever that will help us influence the international community. So probably our journalists on the floor have any questions to our guests in the studio. Well, in case we don't have any, I would like to thank our guests. I wish your movie gets the best coverage in the international community among those who can influence the situation. So once again, let me remind you, we had a presentation of the movie People of Steel, and we were talking about the pre-premiere demonstration in front of the European diplomats, and Ukraine Media Center will continue its operation tomorrow. Thank you for staying tuned. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.